All right, yeah, this is your boy. This is here I am, Eric Reeds. I actually think I got the audio working on my home PC, which is great because it means I won't need to beg people for their computers so I can record OBS videos. Um, okay, I recorded this briefly. I recorded like 5 minutes, and then I'm actually quite inebriated, so that and tired. Then this will be a long video, so I will need to get through this in a reasonable time frame. Hopefully, that would be nice because I want to watch a movie. I've been my friends really like Larry Fessenden. I've seen his film Wendigo, and I plan on watching some more of his films. So I'd like to watch one of those tonight after I finish this video up. But this also might take a long ass time, so we'll see. This is the tier list, the February 2025 RSTPK tier list for online play. So there are some differences between online and IRL play, and when those differences are relevant, I will bring them up. Um, but just this is for like if you want to play in a TCG1 tournament. This is what this is most relevant for. Um, um, Shout outs also to Tfue, aka TFW, who created this tier list, which has 113 images on it. I'm not going to go into as much detail here because I'm assuming that people watching this channel know the basics of RSTPK and they know that Bombtar is a deck that uses Electro DX to power up Tyranitar, and Rayleigh is a deck that uses Stantler to push away things and Rayquaza to attack things. So, um, hopefully, people are aware of these things. But if you're not, then post a comment and tell me that, hey, I don't know what Rayleigh does. Can you explain what that does? And I will tell you, okay. Also, you should join the TCG1 Discord and the Holland Cup Discord and the Retro Pokemon TCG Discord. And follow me on Twitter if you want to learn about RSPK. So also hollandresearchtower.com as well if you want to get lists. With all of those plugs out of the way, we should get into the video because this, like I said, will be long. It's late. I'm drunk. I'm tired. I need to get through this because if I don't, I'm going to talk for a million years. And I would rather get through this and talk quickly and you get the gist of it than talk about how Hariyama EX actually has a position in the metagame if, the stars align right. Okay, also, I might see things and change them as I go, but that will be pretty minimal if that happens. So, okay, starting off, the top two decks, Bombtar and Railer. Some people put Gardevoir in this contention. Some people put Rayleigh above. I am not convinced. Bombtar is the most played deck. It's got a lot of success. It's won the biggest tournaments. Rayleigh has Tord, who has carried the deck for a while now. Um, and that's not to disrespect Tord or Rayleigh, but I just don't really think I would put Rayleigh above Bombtar. I don't think as many people can play it at like the 95th percentile. Well, okay, that's a kind of a meaningless statement. I think that like the baseline for Bombtar is just way higher. Like things can go so much better for Bombtar. Bombtar can also attack its counters like if you just get the right things to going. And Rayleigh against its counter decks will just never win basically. So it just doesn't have like the explosive potential. So I think these two are still the best decks, and the decks below them, I have this in S and S minus tier, but that's basically how it seems to me. Um, it's possible that this could change someday, but for now, I just think that these two are the best decks, and if you want to learn RSTPK, these are both great decks to learn. There's a lot of ways that these decks teach you a lot about the format, and they're both very strong, and they both play very differently, and they both require a lot of discipline and mapping out your options in advance. So yeah, and then S minus tier, I really wanted to just. This is the only like minus and neutral tier I have in this tier list, but um, basically, I wanted to show that like these two decks below the S tier are pretty ahead of the rest of the AE competition. They just feel like they're not quite as dominant as the S tier decks. They're not quite as teched for. They're not quite as metagame defining, but they are still just among the strongest decks, and I wanted to put them here. Gardevoir, of course, has made pretty tremendous strides over the last few months since I made my last tier list. I have seen quite a bit of success with it. People have played my list and seen success with it. It won the Boomer Cup. It's just crazy strong. It beats a lot of decks in A tier and B tier like without much effort. Like honestly, as long as you get like not a horrible start, then you should just steamroll these decks. They really have to just pray that you brick. Um, and it does the problem with Gardevoir is that it specifically struggles with Bombtar and with Railer. Um, and so if you're struggling against the top two decks, I think that does kind of disqualify you from being in the S tier. And for Ratlock, kind of the opposite. You kind of destroy the top two decks, but you cannot beat Gardevoir in if you're both the same skill level. The Gardevoir pilot should pretty much always win. Um, and it does have issues with some of the other decks that I'm going to talk about here. But I think the fact that it can't beat Gardevoir is, well, without like teching pretty insanely for it, that is kind of the big thorn in Ratlock's side. So this is pretty unchanged from what I thought, a few months ago. I just think Bombtar and Railer are meta defining, and Gardevoir and Ratlock are very, very strong decks that pretty clearly to me are just better than the rest of the decks that you can be playing, but are not quite on that level, and they both have like some horrible matchups. Not horrible, but like they just have things that are bad about them that Railer and Bombtar don't really. Um, but what was I gonna say? Yeah, so these are just the top four decks in my opinion. I've had this opinion for a while, so maybe it'll change someday. Maybe Ratlock could be above Gardevoir, or Gardevoir could be up here, Gardevoir could be here. But for now, this is what I've kind of settled on. And moving on down to the A tier, these are decks that I think should be able to top tournaments fairly consistently if people play them. Also, I want to kind of briefly mention usage. That's what I was going to say. So, Ratlock did not. There was nobody on this deck at the last Yokohama, but it is a deck where I'm obviously the biased here, but I'm also the person who knows the best about this deck. It is extremely strong. Um, I know what it can and cannot do, and also the fact that there's only really a few people that can play this deck at the tournament topping level, where that's not really true for these other decks, um, is a point. I think it's relevant to say that some of the things I will be saying, I'm going to say about decks that do and don't have tournament success or recent tournament success. Um, I mean, Ratlock has had recent tournament success. I mean, it's had tops in almost every online event, so it's relevant to say that. Anyways, moving down to A tier. The reason why I mention this is because Dragtrode had nobody on it at Yokohama, and from what I gather, it's not like super played, which is interesting because it's a popular deck in '05, it's a popular deck in '06, and it's a popular deck at least historically in RSTPK. And it's kind of interesting that it's just seen hardly any play recently. I don't really know the reason for that. It seems okay. It does get swerved by Gardevoir like Giga Hard. Like I don't know how you're ever beating Gardevoir, but um, beside and this is also Sneasel Dragtrode. The other stuff is later on this list, but we can kind of see it here. But yeah, the classic Dragtrode I just think is fantastic. Sneasel is a really good attacker into Cess decks, and Dark Trance is a really good ability to have versus Cess decks. You also get to play Trode X like in archetype, so that's really uh, really good because Trode X just is maybe the best DX in the format, either that or Sceptile. So yeah, this deck is just very strong. It has a lot of good things going for it, and also you just auto win like Bayonet, which is a pretty trendy deck. So and you do pretty well against Ratlock. So I think it's just like against the top four decks, it just has a pretty solid matchup uh, chart, and you do pretty well against some other things as well. And then after that, I have the Japanese Gardevoir, which is kind of like the Raspberry Bell Negi Gardevoir list. This one plays a much higher supporter count, high warp point count, lower energy count, and it plays the the Beating Wings Pidgeot, and it plays Jolteon Star as the star of choice. And it is aiming to set up resource loops along with Celebi EX, where you are gaining advantage and using high warp point counts as disruption. And it plays very differently to the American style Gardevoir. I've played against this quite a bit. I actually think this does very well against the American Gardevoir. This is just kind of like American and Japanese Gardevoir, or Western and Japanese Gardevoir, rather. And I think that this does better against the Western Gardevoir, but I think it does much worse against like the Cessation Crystal decks. And because you're not playing Delta Mew, and like the Warp Point count is nice, but also you're just not getting energy on the board very frequently, and so you're much more you can get disrupted in that regard easier. Like ER2 is even more crushing than it is in American Western Gardevoir. At the same time, you're playing Gardevoir EX, so it's like a super good deck. But I think it's not quite on the level of these other decks that are above it. But it's Imprison just wins games. So and then below that we have Bomb Champ. Perhaps the biggest change. Well, I don't know. It's a pretty big change, but um, I think the deck just has pretty high success so far. Like it's got a bunch of tops. It's it has clearly proven that having a slightly worse Bomb Tar that beats Bomb Tar is good enough to play. That it's just it's really good. It's proved itself. Has a high win rate. People can play it at a high level. I think it's just established itself as one of the best decks. And the fact that Bombtar and Rayler are the best decks means it's really good against those is good, but it does struggle pretty hard against the S minus tier decks. So then after that we have the other Dragtrode variants. Now I'm not super convinced. Like there's a lot of duplicate entries on this tier list that are similar to each other, similar builds, but not quite the same. And Dragtrode with Sneasel, this is kind of like the Class Strode variant, and then, or sorry, the without Sneasel is the Class Strode variant that plays Dunsparce and Luna Rock and Charizard Star if you want to intentionally include a worse card in your deck. And also the Sceptile EX variant. This one plays Candy and usually some other attackers like Regirock EX and other things. Doesn't play Sneasel, or maybe it plays one or something. But these are the non-Sneasel Dragtroids. I think Sneasel is just really nice. Being able to drag off is fantastic against Cess decks. It's fantastic against Jirachi decks too. You can drag off the benched evolving guy, and then they have to get that out of the way to Wishing Star again. Um, Excuse me. Or you can just attach our energy and kill something turn two, which is pretty valuable. But obviously, there's good things about all of these Dragtrode variants. Class Strode being able to get out like Girafarig plus Lunarock turn one is pretty nice, definitely. And Sceptile EX is, in some regards, the best EX in the format, so that's worth playing in your deck if you have access to it. Um, I do think that we could see more experimentation with Dragtro this year, and we'll have to see where it goes. But I think that they're all pretty close to each other, but I do value the Sneasel variance higher. The next few we have, I think Destiny is still very strong. It struggles with like high, like it struggles with like Flygon EX and things that have high HP that it can't deal with. It struggles with tank decks. It doesn't really have a way to deal like damage above 70 in most cases. Um, but maybe you could tech for that. I don't know. I don't know. You could throw in a liability wheezing in there. Um, but I've played the deck a pretty good amount recently. I think it's strong. Little River thinks it's not good, which is pretty ironic. Um, but I could see this falling down since he seems like he wants to learn other decks. And the deck success really does kind of just depend on whether or not he chooses to play it. But in my estimation, this deck it does really well um, against Ratlock, and it has pretty reasonable odds against most decks in the format. It does just kind of suck into like exactly Flygon and a few other random things, but I think it does fine against Rayleigh. It does fine against Momtar. It does fine against Dragtrodes. Like it has pretty good odds for most matchups. But you do need to draw cards well. So definitely stack your deck if you're playing this in person if you want to win. Then we have Bayonet. Canton really uh, made people understand how to play this deck, and it's kind of a testament to his prowess as a player and a builder that we've been able to see this resurgence. Also, other people have been playing it very well, like Rogar, but Kenton kind of deserves a lot of credit for the strides that he's made in Bayonet in general. Deck is fantastic. It's the best turn two deck I think. It has a lot of cards that can help it against its problem matchups, like the new package, and it's just a really good. Like it's good into Gardevoir, which not many decks on here are. So yeah, really good deck. And it does get mollywopped by the darkness decks, so there is like a hard cap on how good this deck can be, and it's like this or maybe above Destiny, and it cannot do better than that. Like you just struggle too much against dark decks, but it is what it is. Then I have Nidoqueen. This deck hasn't seen a whole lot of play or success lately. I think people have started like not the RSTPK landscape these days is not like boomers playing their pet decks or decks they liked playing in 2006 or whatever. It's really modernized. You saw, I think Gardevoir was like the second or third most common deck at Yokohama, and that was not a deck that was ever played in any format. So, and then I think like Rayler was like third or something or fourth. So, people are playing RSTPK decks these days. They're not playing 2006 decks. So, I think Nidoqueen has suffered in that regard, but I think this deck has a lot of potential. I've really been enjoying my Raticate plus Sceptile build of this. And it's also just a great shell for Sceptile EX. I think you virtually should always be playing that in this deck. Uh, it's just so good. It gives you something to do against Gardevoir besides just lose, which is nice. And it's a fighting attacker, and it deals with Cess in using Toxic. So yeah, does suck against Bana though. So yeah. Then I have Rags, the most uh, ugly ass deck in the format. Um, it's a fighting deck, and it gets to play Raichu, which is usually pretty good if you're behind on prizes. And it has no really awful matchups except for Gardevoir, which it just loses to. I don't know how you win that unless you open really well, but doesn't really lose badly to anything. It sort of just has these underwhelming matchups against most of the field, but that's enough. I mean, it's a good deck. If you're a strong player, you'll probably do pretty well with it. And if you're a very strong player, I think you'll do very well with it. But I don't think it's going to win a tournament anytime soon. I'd be kind of surprised. I think it just needs a lot of things to go right in a game-to-game basis. So, but it's a good deck. It's a fighting deck, so it can only be so bad. Um, then we have Camler. This deck has not had a good 2024. The only top that it had was Jason topping with it in Double Rainbow, which he did top with it, but it was a 5-2, and then for top cut he switched to another deck. So it's a weird deck. It does. The problem is that like it struggles so much against Radlock and Rayleigh specifically that bringing it to a tournament knowing that you're just going to lose those two matchups is pretty rough. And it doesn't really like have like Gardevoir level commanding matchups against anything. Like you're probably favored against Destiny, but are you like never going to lose? I mean, probably not. So yeah, it kind of lands here. I think it's still a good deck, but I don't. I think it struggles against some pretty relevant matchups, and I think it doesn't have any like Yomi stuff that some of the decks above it do. Um, and yeah, that's kind of my issue with the deck. Um, and also like I just feel like people we don't really know how to play this deck optimally. Should we play reversals or ER2s or PALs or Desert Ruins or ATM Rock? What should we play? Castaway? I don't know. So I think as people start to mine this deck, they can find something that works best. Oh wait, sorry, I'm talking about talking about Ryx. Sorry, Gambler. Also true for Gambler. Like, is Entei Star good? Is Rocket Swab good? Is Unknown E good? Should we be playing this deck differently? We saw Canton play it with Eradicate and Espeon and Hitmontop. So maybe a new future for this deck could be playing stuff besides just Stantler and Camerupt. I mean, it wouldn't be surprising. We see a lot of decks that people just play many different Pokemon in it, and it kind of works out eventually. Like Bayonet, we saw this with. So who knows? Then we have Arcanine. This deck has been dead for months, but I still think it's good. I, I think people just like playing Bayonet because it gives you more things to do, and if you're a good player, like a bad player on Bayonet will be worse than a bad player on Arcanine, and a good player on Bayonet will be better than a good player on Arcanine. And so a lot of people think they're good, so they're going to play Bayonet. But I think this deck is still really strong. Let's see. It struggles, or sorry, it does really well against Ratlock for the most part, unless they have Mime. And I think just getting turn 2 Arcanine is really good. Body Slam on Growlithe can paralyze Jirachi, and then Arcanine can just kill the Jirachi next turn. And then start to set up KOs on whatever evolving basics they have. The deck is pretty good, honestly. Or really good, of course. It's an A tier deck, in my opinion. It has seen virtually no usage for months, but I still think it's really good. And that kind of is the problem with these tier lists is like, do you want to define this by success or do you want to define it by how good you think the deck is, like in a vacuum? So I try to do a bit of both. I tried to manage expectations with this tier list by decks that saw success and then decks that I think are good but didn't get played. So yeah. Also, like it's difficult. Like Arcanine hasn't seen success, but also hasn't been played. So like, can you really say it's had like a bad, results? It just has not been played. So how can I have results at all? Um, but yeah. Then after that we have Chiro Box. I, from what I can tell, these are virtually equivalent decks in my opinion. The one with the U2 and the one without. I don't really know what the pros and cons of either is, but I know that they are both very strong. And now other people are playing them, and it's not just Chiro that's playing these decks. And I still don't really know what their matchup spread is because I haven't played with them or against them hardly at all. But it's just been too consistent, man. It's had too many tops. It's seen too many people pick it up. It's got to be an A tier deck by now. Like it's just seen too many results, and also the cards just seem good. I was gonna say a point for Arcanine is that Latios is kind of at an all-time low, but Shirobux is at an all-time high. So you won't see Latios in like random decks like you used to, but it will be in Shirobux. So watch out. But yeah, I definitely want to play with and against this deck more, but it's got to be an A tier deck. And then rounding off A tier, we have Sceptile. I actually had this higher at one point. Another deck that just has not seen any play in recent times. I think people just want to play Sceptile EX in other decks like Nidoqueen or Gardevoir, um, or Dragtron. Um, but it's a good deck. Tfue has been playing it on TCG1 with Murkrow, and he said it's been pretty good for him with that. Murkrow deals with Cestex exceptionally well, and also Murkrow is just a really good card. Um, and I think it just has so many options of what it can do. You can mitigate spread damage with it really easily with the green Sceptile. Purple Sceptile is also just very strong. And you have quite just a lot of things that you can do, and it has a very high skill cap. I think we are still sort of trying to figure out like the best list for it though. And so I think until we get there, it will kind of just be in this underplayed, underappreciated area. But it's a really good deck in my opinion, and I think if more people played it, it would see the tournament success that some of these other decks in this area have. So, yeah, that rounds up the A tier. My voice is not completely given out, so um, let's get through these other ones. So, in the B tier, another deck that has seen virtually no play in 2024 is Bomb Caddy. This deck is cracked. There's no other way to put it. It does things that no other deck in the format can do in terms of like how fast it can hit you, how many like the if this deck draws well, it beats any other deck that draws well. Like it just is so good. Um, and I know Jason has been working a lot on this deck and on the best list for it. Um, and he's still sort of trying to figure that out for himself, but it is just so good. Like there's just no way it's not a really strong deck. Of course, it hasn't seen any success. It hasn't seen any play. I think it's one of the hardest decks in the format to play right. You have to make some very critical decisions every game, and if you get those wrong, then you can lose very easily. So, um, and then after that, we have the Kingdra variants. A couple of them. Another deck that has not seen much play in tournament, but I've been very impressed with it when I play against it, and also it just makes sense that it's really good because it's a fighting attacker and it gets to ignore the weakness that would come with it. Obviously, being weak to lightning is really bad, but if you can ignore that, then it doesn't matter. Um, the two different tech options here are pretty interesting. Pidgeot Delta, you do have to like compromise your energy lineup pretty hard, which is bad. Um, and also why I don't usually like Pidgeot Delta, but it fits pretty well in this deck because you don't care about the energy too much for the most part, and you get to play like Holland's Cast Form, so you can turn off Pidgeot Delta if you want. And then the Umbreon variant I think is pretty good. You're already playing Delta Espeon in a lot of these to heal and mitigate spread damage. And in this one, you just throw an Umbreon or two in there, and it will be really good. So we finally found a home for Umbreon EX. I think if more people played this deck, it would see pretty strong results. But just have to wait and see. Then we have Scrambled Eggs. This deck has fallen off a cliff, but what can you do? Um, I don't feel like it does horribly against a lot of decks. Like it does bad against Bomb Tar, and it does bad against Gardevoir because they play Ralts. But um, other than that, I don't think it does horrible against most decks. It's a fast Trode deck, so you're not as susceptible to Sceptile EX because you can just get the shit going before Sceptile comes out. Um, but it just has not had the results. It's had Jason trying to play it, and he's been not able to push it to the highest level, and that's Jason. So, and then when I play against other people on this deck, I'm not really impressed by the deck as much. I just feel like it's very hard to play, and if you want to play like a hard to play high ceiling deck, I think Bomb Caddy is just the way to go these days. Then we have Cutely. Um, hasn't seen as much success since Q got second place at the Stamler Open with it, but it's really good. The problem is it does like It's one of those decks that just loses to Ratlock, and it also is one of those decks that just loses to Gardevoir. So it can't really beat those two, but it does do pretty well against everything else for the most part. So you've got pretty good odds into most things, and um, obviously, like Rat plus Pal locking is always going to be good, and you get to play Sandstorm Cradily, which is a funny card that can do things that most decks are not prepared for. So, might be. I'm gonna put this a little lower, but because it does so bad against Gardevoir and Ratlock. But what can you do? What can you do? Then we have the Flygon EX variants. I think Unknown Flygon is my preferred way of playing this deck. It just gets Flygon EX out the most easily, and I think that's really good. If you just are attacking with Psychic Pulse every turn, then you should win most games. But if you're not able to get that out, then you can struggle. You do really well against like Destiny and Flygon Unknown. Just destroys Ratlock and also does pretty well against Gardevoir. But you do struggle into Bombtar. Um, and also the problem with this deck is that like the floor and the ceiling are very close to each other. So if you're like at all good at this format, you could probably just play like one of the A or S tier decks and do better. But if you're not good at the format, then you can pick this deck up and probably beat like Tord Reklev if you get a good open. So, what else we got here? And then Flygon Altaria, a similar idea. Flygon or Altaria is a decent enough backup attacker, and it powers up Flygon without you need to expunge a Candy and a Delta Flygon. So similar idea. You play this with Jirachi um, instead of Unknown. Although I guess you could play Unknown with the Altaria. So then we have Salamence Bomb. It's a stupid deck. So this deck was not considered anything until Double Rainbow, and that it got two top cuts, and then it still was kind of considered a joke until it top cut two more tournaments. So obviously this deck is just good now. Like there's just no denying it. Salamence is good because you can play it with Desert Ruins and it one shots Rayquaza pretty easily, and also its attack gets energy back, so you can do things where you're retreating from Stantler Confusion and getting the energy back when you attack. So you're never really losing advantage there. And also you can like ignore the damage Sandler does by just attaching metal energies. So um yeah, it's just has to be good. I think that the builds of it I'm not 100% sure are correct, but um, it just has to be good. It's got too many good results. Decks that don't have results again, Dragonite. I don't really know where these go. Sceptile seems like a better card than Dragonite Delta, so I assume the Sceptile variant is better. But um, who really knows? Hasn't been played quite as much lately, uh, but Deafen is just cracked, and Dragon Roar is maybe the best attack in the game, one of them. So, um, yeah, I think more people should play this deck. It's a cool deck, and there's no a lot of routes you can go. Problem is still the stadiums that you're supposed to run. I don't know which ones you should do in each of these variants, but as we figure that out, I think the deck will be a little bit better. And then we have Flygon, like the Delta Box variant. I think this deck is strictly worse than the other Flygon decks, but not by that much. It You shouldn't attack with anything but Flygon EX. It's it does 80 damage, and it has no weakness, and it's 150 HP. And being in the active spot, it goes crazy. So I think that you should just be playing a turbo version of this deck and not messing around with. Like, if you want to mess around with setting up a bunch of things and controlling the board state, just play Gardevoir. And if you want to play a Flag on the X, play a Turbo Flag on the X deck. So, then we have Swampert Metagross, or Metagross Swampert. Swampert plus Steel will make a lot of positions on this list. I think this one has the most success, probably. And there's a lot of ways to play it, and it has preparations for every deck. The problem is that I don't know if its preparations are enough. You do struggle versus Gardevoir virtually no matter what you do, and Ratlock virtually no matter what you do. But it has pretty good spread into most of the best decks, and I think um, just think it's pretty good. And there's a bunch of players that, or I know Q is like the main person who has results of this deck, but I think that's enough. More people will play it because it's a fun stage two deck that has big guys in it. So, um, then we have Mutrick. I don't think a single person played this in 2025 or 2024 rather. I don't care. It's a good deck. It's like the least sexy deck of all time. It's so boring, but there's just no way this deck is bad. Turn two disconnects is there's just no way it's bad. Like, I don't believe it. Then we have Kingdra. This is just Kingdra without like text. I don't really know why you would do that. I think you should be playing something in this deck, and so I have the good Kingdra variants in the top of B tier. So, then we have the Meganiums. Probably the Sceptile one is better, but I don't know. Sceptile is just the card to play. And if you're going to play a Sceptile EX deck, Meganium seems like a pretty good fit. I haven't been as impressed with the hybrid nurture and heal ones, but some people like them, so who am I to judge? But yeah, I mean, you solo Bombtar, you have reasonable odds against other things. You cannot beat Gardevoir, and you do okay against Rayler, I guess. So yeah. After that, we have, well, no, that comes later. We have Sceptile Control that May created. I've played this deck quite a bit recently. I think it's quite good. I do think Ratlock is better, but offers like a slightly more aggressive form of that deck. Um, and it does pretty similar things. I might just not be good enough with it to where I don't value it as high as Ratlock, but I think um, it's neat. There's a lot of cool things that it can do. It gets to play Shuppet. It gets to play Zamstar. It gets to play Rocket Swab. Pidgeot quick search for PAL is just busted. So I can see this deck moving up or down depending on how things shape out, but I think it's definitely a very strong deck. Then we have Chicken Box. Very much the deck to play if you want to play Blaziken for some reason. Um, it's pretty good. Pretty good. Has a lot of attackers that can. Um, you can tech the attackers for the top decks. And you get to play Tropius, so you don't have to worry about guard quite as much. And you get to play the Psychic Mr. Mime, or Mime Jr., or whatever. Um, it hasn't seen much success because there's only one person who plays it, but I think it's very strong. I think it has potential to go even higher than this, and we'll see where the ceiling is. Then we have Sombra Steelix. Chaos Slayer is virtually the only person who plays this. Other people like the other Swampert decks, but he's got the top results with it, so that's pretty good. Um, you don't have to play two stage two lines, which is nice. Um, and Celix has the same HP as the other guys, so it should be around as bulky, even if its attacks are not as great. But you have more space to play other stuff. Um, so it definitely has a niche there. I do think that the Metagross variant is better because Scan Blast is just really good against Stantler decks. Um, but yeah, definitely a good deck. 1 second. Then we have Scizor. Uh, Not many people play this, but I think it has probably the highest floor of any deck in the format. If you twin play turn one and turn two boost energy crosscut, you can beat Tord Reklev. Um, I don't see it winning a tournament anytime soon, but I see it topping tournaments if people play it. And yeah, it sucks to play against too. It's so scary. This deck is evil. Then we have Pop. This has not topped anything yet, but I've played enough games against this to know that it is capable of topping. Um, Also, sort of has the signature deck problem where only one person can really play it at a high level, but that one person is pretty good. So maybe we'll see it have more success in 2025. Then we have Shiftry Daunt. I think if you're going to play any Shiftry deck, it should be this one. Um, it just throws a lot of things at the opponent and says one of these things will work. Either it's going to splash back plus skill hack, or it's going to aqua hideout or magma hideout plus target attack, or something. It's going to do something silly. Dirge is pretty crazy. Um, it's got to be good, I think, and maybe more people will play it, but I don't know. It's a really good home for Cardon though. We have so this is like the rest of the A tier is like, or is this B tier? B tier. The rest of the B tier is like decks that are strictly worse than other control decks, but they're just good control decks, so they have to be somewhere on here. Circle Control, Circle Lock, Mew Lock, and Marowak Stantler. Circle Lock slash Circle Control is really good. um, Nobody plays this because to play it. Oh, I haven't mentioned the stuff that's worse about IRL play. If you're playing IRL, don't play any of the like Circle Control, Circle Lock. You can probably play Railer or Candler, but you should get comfortable with the deck. Um, and the bomb decks are probably fine. You won't be losing on prize counts usually, like in time. You'll be losing on prize counts in the game because you'll lose sometimes, but those are fine to play. But yeah, any of these decks, I would say, well, circle decks and you definitely don't want to play IRL. But even on TCG1, the locks just take so long with circle, lock, and control. But these decks are really good. Nobody plays them because you should just play a different lock deck if you want to do that. Melock, same story. You do a lot better against like Dragtrode than Ratlock does, but you trade that for being worse against Trodiax decks. So yeah, but it's a good deck for sure. And then the Marowak Stantler deck, I have not been convinced by this, but I know Little River is super high on it, and I assume he knows what he's talking about. I think Hashidam, if I'm not mistaken, plays it, and so um, it's probably pretty good. I mean, it does the like Stantler plus spread guy archetype, so how bad could it be? And Marowak is good because it hits what's it called? it's a fighting type, and it also one shots like random stuff like Gardevoir Delta, I think. Moving on to C tier. So B tier is like decks that I'd say would struggle taking a tournament, but would not struggle getting top 8. So, yeah. C tier decks that could top a tournament if they get lucky, but I don't think could win, probably. Q's Tyranitar Beedrill deck. I don't know what this deck does, but it got top 4, so I should put it at the top of this. Dragonite Altaria, I think you should play the other good things with Dragonite, but I guess if you want to play Altaria and play like an objectively worse version of the deck, that's still objectively better than like this other shit, then you can play that. Trio Drio, Shedinja, and then like the toolbox one, they're good. You do 40 damage and you go to a fossil, and this is enough to beat decks sometimes. Um, Not much has really changed for that, but I think that you can just play the ugly looking deck lists and it'll be pretty good. Septalia X and Dugtrio are pretty good cards. So, and the Shedinja one, I know May is just really good at this deck, so I assume it's good. LBS, perhaps I should put this deck higher since Little Slinky did well with it, but if you get that kind of matchup luck and in-game luck, I'm pretty sure that any of this shit could have topped. So, um, yeah, this deck is still pretty bad, all things considered, but it did top Yokohama. It got third or fourth or something in Yokohama, so there you go. Scizor Metagross, I've never seen anybody play this at a high level, or like bring it to a high level event. But Jason has played against me enough that I assume it's probably got potential. They're both good cards. I think that nobody will ever play this deck very much. If you want to play either of these cards, there's just different ways to play these decks. So I don't know if it'll ever get played, but probably it would be around here, in my opinion. Armaldo EX, this deck is super slept on. It beats Railer and probably Bombtar, so that should be enough. Also, it's a Unga Bunga deck. You can just be stupid and get wins with this deck. You should play with reversals uh, and the really, really bad Power Keepers Armaldo so you can get through Latios CX. But it's really good. It's really good. Or not really good, but it's better than people would probably think because it auto wins the two top decks. Or not auto wins, but you know, you get what I mean. For Alligator Septalia X, this is probably the best of the Septalia X Cope decks. So it appears here. For Alligator, I can kill a Pidgeot, so that's pretty nice. But unlike Flygon, you don't want to just attack with Alligator, so you have to run other shit like Executor. Wow. Swampert Aggron, nobody plays this because they're going to play the cooler ones. And this deck also got a lot worse by the fact that um, LBS is no longer a deck, but it's still pretty good. And it also beats Raylair probably harder than the other one than this one does, so there is that. But not as sexy, so not as good. Fossil Box. Oh yeah, I think I had Fossil Box. Yeah. This should be a little higher. I think it should be above Armaldo. These two decks are pretty similar in that they both have fossils. They're both fighting types, but I guess they play pretty different. I think Fossil Box will always have a home. It has good fighting attackers and drag off and other things. And it doesn't do too bad against like the top decks. Like you have game against virtually all of this stuff. Yeah, you do pretty bad against Electrode. actually, but if you curse stone and admin them, maybe something can happen. But I think it's pretty solid. You can play it. Maybe you can top with it. Raydoom, nobody will ever play this deck again, but it has Rayquaza EX and Houndoom, so it can't be that bad. Growler, uh, I think Autumn has been playing this quite a bit. Maybe other people have. I think Zhao has been playing this. Um, Sandler's good, and Groudon has the best type in the format. Times two. What are you gonna do? Flygon and Jolteon, this is probably worse, but I assume that if you're doing 80 damage plus 10 damage to all the bench guys, you will win some games from that. But you should probably just play a better Flygon EX deck. Milotic Bomb, I think this deck is funny. Um, you might think, oh, doesn't this deck just brick to Ray EX? Well, no, because you play Protective Orb, and Rayleigh doesn't have a way to get that off of you. And you can two shot Rayquaza with this card with Milotic, or you can play Solid Rage and do 100 damage against other normal decks. So yeah, I don't think anybody's gonna play this in a tournament anytime soon because it's just like the fifth best Tro DX deck. But if you wanted to, I think it's pretty solid. Um, we have ID 23. If you want to play this deck, I guess you can, but I think you should leave it to the man himself. Hariyama, this deck sucks to play against because it just feels like if they knock off the right things like 3 turns in a row, you just lose on the spot. But this never happens, and so the deck is a C tier deck. It's fighting type though, so you can attack fighting weak guys. Um, I don't know what this is. Um, Eradicate plus Houndoom. Uh, I think you can like you're probably better off just like coping 1/1 Houndoom into regular Ratlock. But I guess if you really wanted to play this, you could. It would probably be decent because you're recurring POW. And that's busted. Quad Ray, I guess, is topped as Stambler, but this deck is not very good. You do beat random stuff, like you beat Destiny, and you'll beat Ratlock players that don't know the matchup, but I mean, come on. If this deck was good, it would be played more because it's really easy to play, but it's not played very much and doesn't see much success. Absolutions, play 2007. Shifter EX, play Shifter Cardon. It has more versatility. Like, Shifter EXs past, like, the first two don't matter. And even within Shifter Daunt, you don't usually set up the two Dark Eyes Shifter EXs first. You just set up one, and then you can set up the other one later. But yeah, I think Shifter Daunt is just more versatile and better. Um, Marowak, Crobat, the shitpost deck. Um, this went 5-3 at Yokohama, so it could have topped. I don't know how it does it, but it's got a fighting attacker, and Crobat I think is pretty good, not as a trainer lock card per se, but it has versatility. The problem is it has 90 HP on a stage 2, so it's a pretty bad weakness. Psychic is not what you want to see in this format, but yeah. Anyways, Meta Knight, you can play with Sceptile EX and Cope, and maybe you'll beat some decks. Guaranteed to go 4-3 at every tournament forever. Um, Tomiokaga Special, you play Camler, and then you play Tro DX, and you hope that one of the busted things you do will win the game. Okay, one sec. Alright. D tier is mostly unordered. Um, I said it's ordered-ish, but Explode, nobody's ever played this deck in the last 2 years. It's probably fine. It's probably better than this, honestly, but I don't know where it's at. Play it if you want. Um, I don't know what this is. This is a worse version of a bad deck. This is a worse version of a questionable deck. This deck is actually pretty fun. High Flyer has a cool list for it, and you play enough epic cards like ER2 and Reversal, so things can go your way eventually. And I do like Electabuzz Delta. Um, Dark Slowking, you're a turn 2 deck and you're a Psychic type, so if you want to play like an infinitely worse version of Bayonet, you can play this deck. I don't know what this means. Like, there's a good version of this deck, and it's up here. So, I don't know what this would be doing. Um, the Ikomi Lock Special. Okay, I've not been sold on this deck, but I'm playing mostly decks that just invalidates it, like Ratlock or Gardevoir. But I think he had pretty decent results with it, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe there's something here. Another Epo's Cardon is just really funny, and if you're playing Raticate plus Quad Pal, your deck can only be so bad. So yeah, this is probably better. This is probably like top of D tier, right? You're playing worse Ryegs, but how bad could that realistically be? This is probably more like a Radium deck level, but I've never seen anybody play this deck, so. Um, Beedrill, it's fine. If you do, 80 damage and retreat for free, it's pretty good. ZRE, if you want to play Trodiax, you can play like 7 other things, but it plays Trodiax, so it's pretty good. Ludicargo, you can play Septaliax and cope with it. Whoop-de-doo. Evolutions, you could play a deck that uses one of them well, uh, or a deck that does not get completely hosed by Sceptile. This deck is probably worse than this. I'll talk about it later. This deck, Flygon EX, is bad. This one, so many things need to go right for this deck to like do 100 damage, which is not the sentence you want to have. Torkoal Mill, it's cute. It does funny things. Milling, this is probably as good as you're gonna get, but I think you're better off playing another lock deck that has some degree of results, or playing one of the bad lock decks that is still good because it's doing something silly. Um, the Groudon decks, I think Growler is probably better than this one, and nobody really plays like the Groudon EX Quagsire Magneton deck. I think it's fun. I think it does some funny things. You beat Rayler, kind of, and you beat Bombtar, kind of, but so is Armaldo EX, and I think that's a better deck. So, Dark Steelix, you beat Destiny, and you lose to a bunch of other things. Just play a Swampert deck. Ampharos Pidgeot probably has potential because Ampharos plus Pidgeot does silly things, but I don't think a slightly better Executor Delta with way more setup is good. You need another attacker in this deck, but you're already playing 2 stage 2 lines and kind of shutting off your own Pidgeot sometimes, and have to play a shit energy lineup. So, Walrein, you get to place field and lock your opponent down while you set up one of your Walrein lines. You probably should not play this Walrein. You want to play the power one. Um, yeah, Luna Rock. Why would you ever play this? Rock Lock, for the love of God, play Sceptile in this deck and just hope to win off of that. You're never going to win from your normal strategy. Um, I don't know what this is. I don't know what this is. This deck has not been played in 2 years. Flareados. Play 04. This deck is bad. I don't. Mysterious player likes this, but that is his one cardinal sin. KG likes this. This is his one cardinal sin. Although it's funny, and you hit Sceptile for weakness. So, uh, okay. Um, this is probably better. This is probably like higher, but just play the other Shifter EX deck. Than the worst ones. Play like a rat deck if you want to do this. Do not play this deck. Play Chicken Box. Do not play this deck. What is this? Play an actual fossil deck. Although this deck could be a lot better. I think Polytoad DX, the card, has potential, but you wouldn't want to play like 11 fossils with it and hope for the best. I think there's better things you can do. I don't think I've ever lost a game to this deck. Why? Never lost a game to this deck. Play anything else. Might have potential in some universe, but I've never seen it do anything special. The worst deck in RSWK. Why? Why would you ever play this? You're gonna do all this setup to do 2 million damage one turn, and then like 200,000 damage the next turn, and then lose. Why? Just play LPS, and then don't play. You like. There's so many better decks. Oh my gosh, I hate this deck. That's gonna do it. That's the tier list. Okay, bye.